Welcome to Helping Organisations Thrive. Today I have the pleasure of Gillian Selby on the show. Good morning and good afternoon. Welcome, Gillian.
Good morning and good afternoon.
Yes, so you're all the way in Canada. So you are the founder of Gunn and McQueen, a
Mhm.
company dedicated to helping mid-sized businesses leverage their entire talented team to land and keep more business. And you've got over 20 years in sales, from local account management to teaching strategic selling nationally, managing sales teams, and being a global business director as well. And today we're going to be exploring how to elevate your company as one unit. If anyone talks to the clients, then they are in sales, whether they like it or not, leveraging the strength of your whole team. But before we go there, Gillian, I just want to ask you, what do you love about what you do?
I work in a discipline that most people look upon with fear and terror. It's a little bit of a job that everyone goes, yeah, I guess if I had to, I will do this. And what I really like about it is, in actuality, I think sales is one of those wonderful things that when you do it, you can do a lot of things very well. So you can be an entrepreneur, you can lead a team, you can understand how to create revenue. So what I love is helping change that perception of and reducing the ick factor of working with this set of skills into being something that enhances and makes someone's career wonderful.
And have you always been passionate about sales? Is it something that you've always sort of thought, I really want to get into sales, or did you just sort of it just sort of happen? How did it happen? The sort of the sales side of things.
No. That's the short answer is no. I never thought about being in sales. I have two degrees. I have a degree in economics, and then I went back to school and became a designer as well. And in design school, we had a prof who actually said, if you're truly awful at this, and some of you are, you could always go into sales. Like it was like the gum on the bottom of your shoe. It was even put out going, there's no hope for you. This is it. This is all I can tell you could probably do. So there was always a perception of, oh, really? And I trained to be a designer, and but what I discovered was once you got into it and I started doing it, I moved into sales via marketing. I was working first designing for a manufacturer and designing their showrooms. Then someone let it out of the bag that I had a business degree as well. So they pushed me into marketing and discussions, and I enjoyed it. And suddenly it's going, this isn't as bad as, this isn't the low point. It was actually going, hold on, this is the thing that creates this company. This is the thing that allows me to do all these things, is when I convert someone. And it was a little bit of a light bulb moment. But that said, it took me about 10 years into it to admit that I was in sales. I was in account management. I was client services. I was anything but using the title sales. Just because, you mention to someone you're in sales at a cocktail party and everyone takes a step back. And sometimes that's a good thing. Other times it's a little alienating. So it was a long slog to get to where I am, and enjoying it and proud of it.
Well, we've mentioned two negative thoughts there on sales already, and we've only been in a few minutes on this conversation. Somebody telling you if you don't succeed in designing, then you can always go into sales as a negative, really, in some ways. That sales is a bit of a, oh well. And then also it's perceived in the sort of context of the workplace as being quite a, oh, I don't want to do that, or you're a salesperson and you're going to try and sell things to me, or you want me to sell. And so there's lots of negative overtones with it. I've been in sales, was 20 years in the sales world. Didn't want to be a salesperson as such, but I ended up being in it, quite good at it, and the business side of it. So how do we take that? Because we're talking today about looking at the wider than the salespeople here, because we're saying that in essence everybody's involved in sales at some point. But as soon as you sort of mention those words, people sort of get their back up and think, "Oh, not for me." So how do we create, whether it's a culture, environment, or mindset, possibly, that makes it more acceptable? So how are we doing that? How do you do that? How are you doing it right now?
it is absolutely cultural. It's leadership driven. So perceptions of what that role is within a company will drive how everyone else feels about it. The other side of it too, I'll juxtapose our own personal narrative of saying, ugh, to when you're in an organization that has a sales team, though, we tend to elevate them. So we get the salespeople, and it used to be almost like, thank heavens, the salespeople are here, and in would come the salesperson, almost like Superman cape on, like, I will save this. Because once you're, especially when you're in a small to medium size business, sales are your make or break. So suddenly, when you have someone who's coming in to do this, it's like, thank goodness. So to me, that almost created more friction. Like, it's a nasty job, and now these people are apart. They are over there doing their thing. They're probably creating complete disruption within the firm as well if there isn't a cohesion, if there isn't that leadership drive, if there isn't that cultural piece. So it's these two warring factions, and if they're not addressed, which is what I saw quite often, is you got very disparate and very siloed pieces. And so there was resentment, there is and I think elevation of the salesperson when it shouldn't be elevated, when you get into the team side of things. And when I started my career, this is very much what we would see all the time. But a big thing changed. And two things changed in my business and in most businesses that I saw. And that was technology and complexity. So when I started 25 years ago, I was the sole person who had the information. I would go in to see someone, maybe they would go online, but I'd be there with brochures, I would do this, I would be the, thank goodness the salesperson is here. But now a future client can tell more about my business than I can tell them before they even talk to me. So that's one piece. And then the second one was they had way more people helping make the decision. So suddenly, this is wonderful. I have focused all of my efforts on understanding what this core group is going to need. Well, that core group just brought in 5 people whose needs I don't even understand. So we had technology and complexity. So this old model of the salesperson as, thank goodness they're there and sort of nasty, it won't stand up to the market demands of today. And it's a big issue. So that was a long run of culturally, yes, but also addressing to the entire market has changed and we have to change with it.
Yeah, and it's interesting, isn't it? It has changed, and selling is not just the salesman goes and does the sale, does the pitch, and negotiates it, and walks away and happy with the order. It's, as you say, it's got more complex. It's got more involvement from the rest of the business. The actual organization you're selling to wants to be more involved as well. So it's a far more, collaborative approach, isn't it, rather than just one-on-one sort of thing, head to head.
Very
Do you
much.
think with the whole thing about sales and salespeople, is there a stereotype which polarizes people to why they don't perhaps want to be in sales or why they think they can't sell? Do you think?
Yes. And especially I'm talking to you from North America, so I'm not too sure if you'd see the same thing where you are, but in my market, it's literally someone with big hair, white teeth, and looking absolutely marvelous. Like, it is the polished and absolute perfection sort of piece, and a fakery of it, if you will, like someone who is this parody of what a real person is like. Now, that's not to say I will tell you, if you are in sales, you are very conscious of how you present yourself to others. But the stereotype is, oh yeah, very much. It's I think that's almost that is damaging for 2 reasons. Number one, you have someone who could be awfully talented, but they don't view themselves in that manner. They don't say, hey, maybe this is a position I should look into. But also it downplays the reality of what sales is, of this glossy thing that comes in and shouts, aha, I have solved all of your issues in your company, sign here on the dotted line. It doesn't work that way. So that is a big challenge, I think, too, for when we look at the entire culture within that company, is if that image is held, that's a big stumbling block for how do you collaborate to circle back. It's nasty.
Yeah, and I think it's as I say, it was just what we talked about. It's gone from that typical salesperson to a broader team that's involved, isn't it? And unfortunately, that having that stereotype means you don't want to be potentially associated with that, or you don't feel you could be associated with that. So how do we, I guess, create those organizations that you're working with? I mean, how are you helping them to make more that everybody is involved in the sell and are selling, even though perhaps they don't realize they are selling? Do you do some like sort of reframing with them, or I don't know, how are you going about that? Because as soon as you mention the word selling, it does just scare people, doesn't it?
I actually took the word sales out of most of my proposals. I don't tend to market as much to sales organizations. Very large ones focus on a lot of training. I'm focused on small to mid-sized firms. And in my mind, they're the most agile. They're the most able to pivot, to pull different resources, but they're also the most resistant to the word selling. So yeah, like it is that. I'm approaching it sort of four-pronged, if you will, because you can't change one area of an organization except everyone to follow suit and go, oh, we get it now. So the first is that leadership discussion. And it's a discussion on, are each of your departments separate, or are they talking to each other? Do you have revenue leaks? How have you built this to support each other? Money drives behavior. Compensation drives behavior. So if people are compensated in opposition to the sales effort, no matter what I talk to them, it won't happen. In other words, let's say if your accounting group is compensated for closing the number of open files, regardless of what happened on the contract, you're going to be in opposition. So there has to be those discussions. The other one is getting out of the minutiae, little details like that, and sort of saying to the entire company going, we are in business when we move our service or our product, and we do this as a team. Yes, your business developers may be out to find those leads, but at any point along the way, with all the effort it took to find that person, it's very easy to lose them. So we're all either part of the process or we're not part of the process. I don't know if you've ever mapped out where you've lost jobs in the past. It's very hard when you're a salesperson to go, I worked so hard to close this. And then I lost it when I had a client who once wandered into a room they shouldn't wander into in a large building by accident, but they were escorted out very abruptly. And I lost a very large deal because of that, because there wasn't politeness. I sold furniture is what I sold, was contract interiors. So any large buildings. I've lost large scale clients when one of my project management team had words with someone and oops, guess who overheard it? CEO, we've lost the job. It really is impactful. And the opposite, I have gained clients because of the most amazing service that I was able to provide when I wasn't in the room. And that's a team approach. So it's having the whole team start to embracing that we're in this together. We're not us versus you. We're not accounting versus sales. We're not marketing versus sales. We are a small to mid-sized business who will be successful if we all align towards this big goal. And then in comes the training, because that's wonderful. You get your leadership conscious. Everyone agrees, yes, we do want to create revenue. And then we teach how to do that. Like, not very complex, but here you are. If you're in charge of the client, this is what you need to do. This is how a sales process works when you're not a salesperson. If you're the entire team, how can you help welcome someone? How do you create that service orientation, that hospitality feel, if you will, when someone comes in? So it's pronged. You can't just address part of it. It is large scale.
And just going back to the leadership alignment, or the top, I guess, which is obviously vital for anything in an organization, is making sure the leadership on board and how that might play out in the context of that company. Have you got some good examples where you've done that alignment and has had a significant, and some examples perhaps where, or you're observed it wasn't going quite well? Some, I guess, observing the problems really.
I can give you a good example of when it didn't work well. So as we all know, this was a few years ago, but our workplaces have changed dramatically, especially with COVID. But before that, if you looked back 30 years, what your office looked like then compared to now is dramatically different. One, I was working with an engineering company here in Western Canada, and we were working on a new prototype for, can we get better productivity if we implement a new style of space, including a lounge? Now, this is a few years ago, but we did our due diligence, we did our tests, we did everything. We ordered the furniture, we brought it in, and the very first engineers sat down, the VP of something walked by and said, "Oh, nice to see you don't have any work to do." Laptops were closed, no one would touch it. And we ended up replacing that entire thing with old style furniture, 6 months later. We didn't have that leadership endorsement. We didn't have that understanding of process. So it doesn't matter what we implemented, even though it was cutting edge, there were a lot of benefits. If they're not aligned with what we're doing, it won't succeed. So the teams that I'm working with now, a lot of it is just sort of going, what is the language that we need to use? When you're going out to talk with someone and they're saying this, do you understand what we are bringing to the table and why? And does it align with your values? That's the key thing. We're bringing in something for your company that aligns with your values, that aligns with your business plan and your mission. But also, you're going to be out of your comfort zone because this is different. You probably started this company, or it was a smaller company when you were there. Now you've got, 59 employees, and this is feeling a little bit funny. So that's the coaching. Is like, embrace it. This isn't a bad thing, but it's different. And then we bring in our metrics, and the metrics help a lot.
Yeah, that alignment is important, really. I think it's not just in a sales context, in everything, that getting awareness of what your purpose of your business is, and making sure that every department or area is got alignments and goals that are aligned to serving that and to delivering on that. And whether you're in sales, whether you're in accounts, finance, whatever, it's really important. and I think, as you made that point about there wasn't alignment in that example you just gave, which and it just went completely wrong, wasn't helpful. And it's making sure at that top level there's absolute alignment what we're trying to do and how we're going to go about this from each team, because you're always going to get pushback and from people when there's change or new ways of working, and sort of try and grow, because ultimately people want to grow their business, make it sustainable, and therefore everybody's part of that in some shape or form. So when you've got that alignment, how do you then take this, I guess, making people feel that they're part of the bigger cell in terms of the team, whether you're in accounts or you're the delivery guy or whatever role you play? How do you, what are you doing? Are you doing specific training on this, or are you impacting the leadership that goes down? How's that happen? What sort of things we need to think about if people are listening to this right now? How do they sort of I guess manifest this in their organization?
The first big thought that I want every company that I work with is to change, especially if they're experts. So I work a lot in the engineering and architecture and finance industries, people who have worked really hard to get to where they are, and they're incredibly knowledgeable. They are the expert in their field. When it comes to generating business, though, you need to switch from being come to me, I know all, which you do. And I'm not displacing it. What I am saying, though, is that you need to flip the switch to say, how can I be of service to you? And how can I come to where you are? And that, to me, is one of the largest, most impactful decisions a company can make as a team, to say, we're not disputing or dismissing your expertise, but as a company, if we are going to help create like, value, and trust, those three things are why people will work with us. They like us. We embody values that are similar to theirs. We're nice people. Never underestimate how impactful it is to say, these are nice people that I want to work with because I'm going to see them for the next 10 years. I'd like them. That they see value in our proposition. They understand our expertise. We mirror something, or we reflect a need, but that they trust us. And trust is key. And we have to go out and develop those relationships that trust is about respect. Trust is about understanding and that they're listened to. And that means going out there instead of saying, come to me. Come to me does not establish trust. And without that, like and value won't gel. So change your mindset to being of service and asking the questions. And everyone in that firm can find out that information. We were talking earlier before we started about those great questions, but open-ended questions. So that would be number 2. Establish a service mindset of going out and being of value and service to others. 2, learn to ask questions.
And just that service thing. It's just a slight little tweak, isn't it, in mindsets, rather than
but massive.
It's that wanting to serve, wanting to help somebody, and having that intent. People start to feel it, don't they? When I talk to a client or a prospective client, and if I'm there to help them and genuinely serve them, they'll feel that. If I'm just there just to try and get an order and a contract and money, they'll feel that as well. And it's slightly different, isn't it? And it's only a little tweak, isn't it?
It's a little tweak, but I think too, it's without that wanting to be of service, that's when we get the slimy salesperson phenomena, regardless of whether you're in sales or not. Without that, I would like to be here. I'm bringing something of value to you. I believe in it. It's wonderful. This is why. And here's where you're at. And this is how it can benefit you. Without that service thing, it's here's my stuff, buy it. And there is a real, anyone who's ever bought anything can feel the difference immediately. You go in to buy a car and someone's like, hey, you sign on the bottom line today. I'm going to get you this deal, do that. Versus someone who's talking, going, tell me about your family and what you need this to do for you.
Yeah.
And one is come to me, I got the stuff. And the other is let me come to you to where you're at and find out why you're looking. But you have to consciously make that mindset. If you have had a very strong quota-based organization, you must close this many square feet of construction. You must do this. You're in the push my item, typically, because that is what you're rewarded on. And you'll end up generating a lot of new business all the time, but you won't hold that business. So you flip to a service mindset and you start those discussions with those open-ended pieces in service. It may take a little bit longer, but if you want to keep those clients with you past that one and done phenomena, you sort of need to do it now.
So you think having a service mindset and approach gives you sustainability and loyalty? Does it drive? That's what you're saying.
The cost of client acquisition now is just going up. It's incredibly expensive to find new clients. And it's hard, right? There's a lot of noise out there, and like I said earlier, they already know everything about you. If you have a website, if you have anything posted, if you've got your annuals out there, if you're public even, it's very easy to find out a great deal about your company and every other company. The big part now for any organization is helping to cut through all that static and help someone see your value. Because right now, if going back to my furniture example, if I put an office suite in front of you, it looks great. Any one of my competitors could have put exactly the same thing, and you would just sit there and stare at it and go, I guess they're all good. Without having those conversations around service and how can I help you, their only recourse then is to go to price. They all look the same. Which one is the cheapest? So it's value.
How do we create that sort of mindset, but also incentivize that in the wider organization? Because obviously organizations have to hit sales quota per se at some points. So how do you help people create that helping mindset and service mindset and incentivize them to do that more of approach, which might be a slightly slower approach than sort of normal?
The first is creating respect within the organization. So a lot of organizations that I work with, like has talked about silos, but there's friction. I often will tell, like, where are your teams when you walk in? Sales is that far corner because they just bug everyone else. It's like, okay, all right, we already know there's friction. We sourced out other lines. Our accounting department has a door that's locked and they lock it so no one else can get in. Our project managers aren't even in the main building because we don't want them to disrupt things. And that's when you start going, we've literally created all these barriers. And that is a very common thing that I see. So the first one is working on just going, each of us is needed here. Like, we can't do this job without any single one of us. And helping develop that respect. There's some great exercises that we can do with that. So that would be my first stage, is internally liking each other or respecting each other. Maybe you won't, maybe sales and accounting will never like each other because they're often at odds, but they can respect what the other one brings to the table. Then we take it out. And yes, it might be slightly slower when we start asking those questions instead of pushing for the close, but it will allow us to scale as opposed to just grow, right? When we are able to retain our clients longer, when we have those healthy relationships and they stay with us, we're not always trying to find that new client, the one and done. So a slightly slower takeoff, but much higher revenue in return. And I do believe, though, that when the entire company sees that effect, and they're included, it's communicated to everyone. You don't just tell the salespeople about the numbers. You tell everyone about the numbers. You say, here's where we need help. What have you heard? All of my client meetings used to be not just with sales, but I want my project managers. I want the accountant who's on there. I want my specifiers and my designers to come in. What have you heard? What can we do better? Where are the challenges? What is the competitor doing with them? How can we improve ourselves? That then is when you start working as a team. So it's work together for respect and then actually work together. Pull people
and including the wider team. And I've done it in sales organizations I've been part of where we've had various experts involved in the whole sale and delivery as well. Because often once the sale's through, the salesperson per se is not really involved in the delivery side of things. You know, it's the service you offer or the product you give or whatever it is. And it's important to recognize that when you've got other people involved, they need to have a positive relationship. They also need to have a relationship where they're thinking and still a mindset as an ongoing, creating this loyalty where they're saying, I still want to help you. How can I help you? And that builds even more the sale, doesn't it? It builds even more the potential opportunity with that client.
That's where the training comes in. Apologies. When someone is, you have your sales team and they close and they leave. So who's in charge? About 5 more people. And are they always thinking about what else can we do? And when you do get there, that changes everything. Like, how do we help this client more? What other opportunities are here? How do we tell the team? That's really important.
And I think that mindset, that helping mindset that everybody in the organization have is probably really fundamental and key. And just before we finish, what are you seeing in terms of how we are now with this new changing world in the last 2 years? How different is sales or business development or client acquisitions? How are you seeing the differences and things we need to think about?
It is much harder, much harder. And that usually what you always wanted was FaceTime. How do I get FaceTime with someone? Well, guess what? We are now able to work from anywhere. So my FaceTime might be with someone in Atlanta, Georgia. How do I get in front of them? How do I find that person now when we don't even know? So, and also there's just market confusion. We don't know what's going to happen. We're a little bit concerned. We ourselves are struggling with what our company needs. So it's very hard to come in and say, hey, I've got this great solution for you. It's another reason why I do think leveraging your whole team is so impactful. You know, you have different organizations you can join. Well, so do other members of your team. And they can leverage those relationships to help get you in the door. Instead of always going in a straight line, think of it as a web. And how do we flank someone that we want to meet and make it a value for them? Now, the other side, instead of being negative, is what we're doing now. LinkedIn, for instance. Our ways of taking our message are much larger, much more accepted. So can you be on YouTube? Absolutely. Should we blog and write? Can we leverage our team to write and bring new things to a client? How else can we have added value to someone who isn't in the office? Well, we're not in the office either. So instead of being glass half empty and going, it's a lot harder, it is actually just different. And you have to, though, it isn't business as usual. So it's not going back to 2 years or 3 years or 4 years. It's really starting to say, what do we need to do now that will help us stay in business. There's so much competition that you can't not do that right now.
Yeah, and I'm seeing a lot of small businesses where the different members of the team, they're not outward sort of salesy type people, are getting to networking meetings, and they're sort of spreading the load of that advocates for the business and representing the business, and I think it's really positive. They're getting a bit of an uncomfortable zone, but it's good for them, but also it creates greater capacity and impact because you've got more people doing it as opposed to just either the owner or the CEO or the salesperson. They're all doing it.
Absolutely. And here's the key thing. One of the things I teach, so when I work with all these teams, a lot of these people who have never thought of themselves as a salesperson are in that situation because, as we discussed, everyone's in sales. Give people the tools to understand how to be successful. It's not a networking group. If you're not coached or mentored, most people I know either go for it, thank goodness there's a buffet. Yay. And I don't mean that sarcastically, like end of day, especially if someone is new. Guess what? Our new graduates they can struggle. They are living, pennies thin. So going to an event that's paid for that they don't have to buy dinner is very appealing. But the goal is to come out, and it's not with business cards. A lot of people then say, okay, well, I'm going to go eat. No, I have to come out with 3 business cards. No, you have to come out with a goal for the next 3 steps. When you met someone, what are you going to do now? Not just, I've got this. It's, here are my next steps. Here's how I talk to someone. Here's how I extricate myself. Here's good manners. All things we used to teach actually a lot that I've not seen taught in 25 years. And we have to start bringing that back as we put more people out there, say, embrace it, but here's how you'll be successful doing it.
Yeah. Well, it's been great talking to you, Gillian, this afternoon, and appreciate your insights on this. And I think some really valuable takeaways for people to embrace, and that everybody can be involved in the sale at some point, and it's more impactful if a business embraces that approach and be more successful. If people are interested in what you do, how can people get in touch with you, connect with you?
You can definitely follow me on LinkedIn. I post a great deal there, and it's under Gillian Selby. My website is gunnmcqueen.com. That's GUNNMCQUEEN.com. And definitely follow me there. And I do an email newsletter. I have a webinar next week, actually, if you'd like to sign up. And I do those actually every 2 months on how to help you with certain parts of being out in front of the public eye. And I would enjoy an opportunity to meet new people.
Well, thank you for your time today, Gillian. Much appreciated.
Thank you, Julian. It's a pleasure.